Appalachian mountains are just peaceful trails and stunning views? Well, they can be. But deep in these woods, some have a different experience, leaving behind nothing but terror. Don't forget to subscribe and like for more content, and let's get into it.
We live in a farmhouse that's over 100 years old, and the barn on our property was built in the mid-1800s, and it's actually registered as a church. So I do have a church on my property, but we use it as a horse barn. When we moved in, there was nothing in the attic. Like, it seemed like the original owner had been in there, but the previous owners to us didn't do anything with it. So our plan was to make a main bedroom, big bathroom, and then a dressing room. And it became very clear after we started messing with the attic that something was not very happy. We had a tree fall on our barn. We had our septic system back up on a holiday weekend nonetheless. Like, the house was very upset that it was being disturbed. So in the process of doing the attic, we started ripping up the floors, right? And my husband finds some lace with like a gun wrapped in it, really old, like antique looking. And then he finds like a couple of pieces of clothing, and we pull it down out of the attic because we have like not very much light up there, right? And I'm like, this looks like a nightgown. Like this really looks like a nightgown. And it's very weird that it was just like wrapped up in this lace with this gun, right? And obviously we have nothing to go on based, other than assumption that stuff has been over there or under the floor for like, 100 years. So as the time goes on, we start finding other things. And we start having more activity in the house. And it's almost like we disturbed something and like opened a can of worms, and then we just couldn't get it to stop. This is like a super condensed version of the story, but we basically started poking around, and I asked the neighbors we had. They were in their 90s at the time. They've since passed, but I asked them like if they knew anything about the original owners of the house, and like what happened to the wife, because I'm like, this is kind of sketch. And the original owners, apparently he was just a man and his 2 daughters, and allegedly the wife like worked out of town, and then eventually decided to move, and they didn't really see much of her. So I'm like, oh, okay. We also found like shoe boxes, newspaper clippings, these colorful vials. We have no idea what's in them. And then we started pulling up more floors in the back of the attic before we like did the addition or like did the remodel. And we noticed that part of the floor was already ripped up. And it didn't seem to be like purposeful in the first place. And then we found a check stuck to the bottom of the floorboard, like someone had ripped them up and was looking for it. That's what we're assuming. Again, allegedly, we don't know, we're just guessing. And it was the payout or the receipt for a life insurance policy check. And so my husband and I are just like putting our theories together. Like, okay, so we live in this house. We have like this 100-year-old gun. We have this nightgown. We have this story that the wife allegedly was never seen. We have these vials. We have no idea what's in them. And then we have like some pieces of clothing. Now, I consider myself to be a little bit of a horror movie buff, and I'm sitting here sifting through this information, and I'm like, okay, there's a body somewhere. Like, there has to be a body here somewhere. So the first place we look, obviously we pull up all the floors upstairs, but then I'm like, there's a church on our property. They buried her in the church, right? That just makes sense. So we go into the barn, which was the church, rip all of the flooring out of it, dig, feet deep. It needed, the foundation needed repaired and everything anyways, and nothing. We pulled floors up in other parts of the house, nothing. Now, in the meantime, while we're searching, we're just disturbing more shit. And it seems like whatever in our house is just getting more pissed. One day, my husband is noticing that the plaster in our dining room has like a crack in it by our dining room table, and he's like picking at this little crack. Mind you, the house is over 100 years old. It's gonna have, little cracks, little imperfections. It's what makes it so great. And he's picking at this wall, and I'm like, honey, don't pick at that crack in the wall, because if you do that, we're never going to get the plaster to look the same as the rest of the walls. These are 100-year-old walls. If you mess it up and we have to drywall over it or whatever, it's not going to look the same. And he's like, yeah, well, this wall never has looked the same. This wall has always looked a little off. And he's picking at it, and he goes, there's no horsehair in this plaster. And back in the day, apparently it was very common to put horsehair and filler in the plaster and it kind of gave the plaster a bit of shape, I guess. Well, he's like, this plaster isn't the same as the rest of the house. And I'm like, that's weird. So then we get to looking at the outside of our house. Because now I'm like, I want to know what's back there, right? And he's like, there's a fireplace back here. And I'm like, I don't really, why would they plaster in a fireplace? Because I know there was an oil heater back in what was my office. But why would they plaster in the fireplace? We didn't think much of it, right? It wasn't a big deal. There's a masonry oven here. We're not really thinking of the dates at that point. Then as time goes on, things kind of start to amp up again, because we're asking questions, we're poking around, we're picking at the walls apparently. And I notice we start having a figure standing kind of in the entryway of our closet door in our bedroom. And I'm like, what the hell is up with that? That looks like a grown ass man. That is a big ass shadowy figure. And I told my husband, I'm like, I don't know what the hell is up with all of that. I've heard people seeing the hat man or whatever. This dude has no hat. It's just a rando dude standing in the closet, right? And it's a tiny closet. 100-year-old homes have teeny tiny closets. So now I want to know. I'm looking for stuff. I want to know what's going on. I want to know more about the history of the house. Well, one day I'm sitting there talking to my husband about how the house was made. And the history of the house, and how it was interesting that there was an oil heater in the house, because in the 20s it would have made more sense, or when the house was built it would have made more sense to heat the house with wood. And he looks at me and he goes, oh my god, I wonder if she's in the fireplace. I'm like, hang on, what? He's like, I wonder if her in the winter time, and then the ground was hard, so he put her in the fireplace and plastered her into the wall. And I'm like, you got me up again, all allegedly. We're just worst case scenario. It's always what we jump to, right? Then we're researching the house a little more thoroughly, and he's looking at the floors, because we have wood floors, and some of it is old school 100-year-old wood, and some of it's newer. And we're looking at where the addition went in, and he goes, the bedroom closet, where the closet is, he's like, that used to be the front door of the house. That was the front of the house. So this man that I kept seeing standing in the closet, the doorway of our closet in our bedroom, was actually standing on his front porch. But the front porch was now part of our bedroom. So I'm like, my theory, her, allegedly, put her body in the fireplace, allegedly, plastered it into the wall, got an oil heater to heat the house. Oh, did you just hear that? My door just opened. Did you just hear that? Did you just hear? Wait. Could you not? Nims, what are you looking at? Nims? Nims. Again, allegedly. We gotta wrap this up because now I'm getting the creeps. And then I think, because we can't find her death certificate, after a reasonable amount of time, they couldn't find her, right? She's missing, they can't find her. He collected on the insurance policy, right? But then couldn't find the check when he went to move. That's my theory. Got stuck under the floorboard where he hid it. That's why he ripped up all the floors trying to find this check that was lost in our attic for the last 100 years. And then we found it when we were doing the remodel. All alleged. I'm an avid horror movie watcher. I could be blowing a molehill into a mountain. I don't know. Possible. However, this time of year, in the colder months, she goes off. She's opening doors, slamming doors, pounding her feet upstairs. I don't know what happened to her, if anything did happen to her in this house, but I know that whatever it is, she is pissed about it.
I was home alone. My dad and my brother were both at work, and my mom had just taken the dogs to board them. So I went up to my room, and like probably 10 minutes after I'd been sitting in my room, I kept hearing like noises downstairs. So I was just sitting in my room, I kept hearing noises. I was like, oh my god, no. And then it turned into like what sounded like humming downstairs, and I was like, oh, please get out of my house. And so I started recording because I was home alone, and I feel like recording makes me feel like there's somebody with me, even though, well, I guess there was people with me because I was downstairs, but I started recording because I felt less alone when I was recording. So I opened my door, and at the bottom it sounded like it was coming from the bottom of the stairs, and it was like the end lyrics of Amazing Grace. And I was just like, oh, what? And the other thing is, like, there was no music behind it. It was just people singing. So I was like, there's no way that that's like a TV or anything. But still, I was like, you know what? I want this to not be what I think it is. So I called my friend. I FaceTimed her. And I was like, hey, I'm going to walk downstairs if you'll stay on the phone with me, please, because I'm terrified, and told her what happened. And so I start walking downstairs, and I go, like, my first thought was a TV, the Alexa. We have this speaker system that goes through our house, so I was like, okay, maybe it's coming out of that. I checked all of that. I checked all the TVs in my house. None of them were on. I think there was one TV on, but it was, like, on the, like, pictures that show when the TV's, like, been not used for a while, so, like, it wasn't playing anything. The Alexa was off. The speaker system was off. So I was like, great, that's really amazing. Immediately ran back up to my room, sat on my bed, staring at the wall, debating whether I wanted to jump out my window or not, because I still had, like, a while until my family got home. So I ended up showing my mom, and I showed her, but we didn't really, like, she didn't really think too much about it until a while later. We brought it up again, and she was like, well, you know, we inherited these cassette tapes that your great-grandparents would, like, record, and they're all in the basement, so let's order a cassette player and listen to them and see if we can find anything about, like, your great-grandparents singing, like, Amazing Grace or something, because they used to sing hymns a lot. So we were like, maybe Amazing Grace was one of them. Also, mind you, I live in Appalachia, like, it's called, the town I live in is called Talking Rock, and it was Native American land. So, yeah. It's called Talking Rock because the Native Americans believed that the mountains would speak to them. So, that's kind of creepy. And there's always stuff that happens in this house. Like, when I heard that, I was like, you know what? At this point, yeah, we found cassettes that my great-grandparents, well, my great-grandfather was talking about singing Amazing Grace, and I actually have it with me, so I can play it. So yeah, I'm gonna play this and let y'all hear it, because it's creepy. Okay, I'm gonna play it. I was not born in a generation that knows how to use these things, so bear with me while I try to figure this out, but oh my god, it's gonna be so creepy. I'm actually kind of scared.
How sweet it was, and still is, to trust in Jesus. I recall how we would sit on the steps of that old colonial home, learning and singing those old gospel songs like Amazing Grace. How sweet it was to...
What? What do you mean you sang Amazing Grace? So yeah, I don't really know that I believe that like spirits, like, of people that have passed away stay, like, with their family members. I kind of just think that it's something else that's, like, impersonating them. So that's kind of creepy.
When I was younger, my family had Korean exchange students that lived in our house, and one of the students shared a room with me, so we had a bunk bed, and she took the bottom and I took the top. And during this time, my dad had removed all of the doors to all the rooms in our basement because we were getting new carpet. And so I wanted a little bit more privacy. For Christmas, my grandma gifted me some door beads, but they didn't come to the floor all the way. They were about a foot off of the floor. And my sister Callie would always come in and just steal my clothes, my makeup, whatever she wanted to use. And I was a pretty light sleeper, so she would slide under the door beads to come in the morning before school and to not wake me up. There was one particular night where my exchange student was visiting her uncle in another state for Thanksgiving. I was alone in my room. It was nighttime, everybody was in bed, and it was dark, and I heard my door beads. I looked over and I see what looks like my sister, just like her silhouette, and she's got long curly hair, and she was crawling on all fours with her hair, and her hair was like hanging in front of her face, and she was crawling on all fours, sliding under the door beads, and I could see the door beads sliding against her back as she slid under. And once she got under, she like hurried to the end of my bed where the closet was at the foot of my bed. I was thinking to myself, like, oh, I caught her in the act this time. I'm going to totally tell her that I knew she was stealing my clothes. I snuck to the edge, to the end of the bunk bed, and I just tried to scare her. And when I looked over the end of my bed, there was nobody there. I just started screaming, and then my sister ended up running down the hall, and she came in and turned on my light, and she's like, what? And I was just like, and I just freaked out and told her what had happened.
If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe so I can bring you more chilling content. And until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and question everything.